Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. What night is it tonight? It is Monday night, and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. As always, we're going to go around introducing our esteemed panel, starting with Dr. James Miller, the gentleman who says that I threaten him to be here on Mondays, but he tends to always be on time. Hey, Dr. Miller.
Good evening, Nikki and Congressman Davis and my esteemed colleague. I'm glad to join you all this evening. And I'm a retired physician. I retired in 2019. However, I am still interested in healing our community. And I was listening to a conversation that before we came on that Congressman Davis was having, just in terms of what kind of things sort of get things set off, and how we need to be concerned about being as nice as we can in interacting with other people. And sometimes we may be upset, but we don't know, and and our being upset with the situation may cause us to say some things that may be offensive, or may be abrasive to the other individual who's on the other end. And I think the advice that he was giving is that be as nice as you can, despite what you might be going through. We can always be having difficult days, but despite that, try to be nice to the other person, because oftentimes it's not necessarily that they are trying to make it any more difficult. They often are just doing their job. And so that's so important for us to realize in our daily walk. And so I'm happy to be on this panel tonight, and hopefully we'll be able to give you some information that can shine a little light on your life and on your health, and make your day a little better.
Standing, and thank you so very much. Well, to the woman who's known on these streets as Dr. 100, well, now
I don't know. Are you all having trouble? Is Nikki going in and out for you all?
Yes.
Well, I will say, I'm guessing she's talking about me next. I'm looking around at my colleagues, and I just want to say thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Congressman, for having this forum.
I am in audio problems.
Oh, hello? Yeah. And yes, before we started, I was listening to them talk about what we can do in this heat and how to prepare for it. I know we talked about it before, but we can't hear it enough. So I'm excited to talk more about that today, how we can protect our community and what are the safe spaces. Thank you.
Outstanding. And yes, Dr. Meyer, we are having some audio difficulties. It may be the heat. Well, I want to say hey to Sister Bonnie, who is here with us. She says good evening to everyone. Audrey J. Cox is here, and she says good evening, and yes. And well, to my colleague who leaves and goes and have fun in the sun, but he's back here in Chicago. That's our very own Dr. Douglas Graham. Doug?
And I can tell you, Nikki, it's too hot for me to have fun in the sun today. I'm a retired physician like Dr. Miller. I spent 30 years working in the western suburbs. And after I retired, I worked with the congressman in his office. It really opened my eyes to public health and public service. It's a real honor and a treat to be here with the congressman tonight, my esteemed colleagues. And we're going to do our best to answer the questions. I'm going to step right into this because one of the most useful continuing medical education courses I had was exactly in this set of circumstances. I would say that perhaps now, more than in the time of COVID, we're under tremendous stresses. And so that people are going to be far more irritable than they were 2 and 3 and 4 years ago. And we're under stresses because we are at war, even though people have been fooling around with the definition. There are threats going on internationally, daily. We are under economic stress because of inflation and shortages. And so that people are going to be far more easy to provoke and irritate now than they've ever been. So what I was taught during my course was, if you want to escalate a confrontation, just say no. Try to defend yourself and fight with the other person, and things are just going to go up like that. The only way to de-escalate the solution is to agree with them and to apologize. It costs you nothing to apologize. You're actually the stronger person for doing it rather than the weaker one. It's the best way I know to avoid a bullet to the chest. Apologize, say you're right, say that you're sorry, and let that person get on with their business, because your life isn't worth the argument.
Outstanding. Well, to the one who makes this possible for us each and every Monday night, to the one who tells us that true wealth is your health, that's our very own Congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, Congressman Danny K. Davis. Congressman?
Well, let me thank all of us, and I guess all of us can participate probably more effectively than what we do in creating a healthy environment. and I guess a healthy environment can be where people are considerate of each other and where we reduce anxiety and stress as much as we can and still feel that we are exercising our personal space, whether it's at work, whether it's at play, whether it's at home. And so I know we don't like to think in those terms, and we don't like to think that way. But I think the Panthers used to have a saying that you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. And I think in many instances, we might be as much a part of the problem, searching for a solution. And if we reduce the problems, then we don't have as much need for solutions because there was no problem to solve. So I look forward to hearing what our viewers and listeners and participants have to say about this business of violence reduction and the role that violence play in our everyday lives and in society. So thank you very much.
Well, with that being said, we're following your request, community. The community requested that we have a conversation about stress or what causes stress or how are we dealing with stress. And we had a number of questions in reference to does stress lead to violence? And someone actually sent us the article about a road rage situation that just recently happened just about 2 days ago in Chicago, where one young woman actually couldn't deal with her road rage, I guess, and she murdered the person in the car in front of her by getting out of the car, going up to their car, and then placing 4 bullets into that person's chest. But not only that, my other coworker, Caleb Gilchrist, shared with us that right there in Maryland, where they are, right outside of Washington, D.C., right outside of D.C., the same thing happened. 2 gentlemen got into a road rage situation, and the gentleman got out of his car, walked up to the other car, and shot and killed that driver. He turned himself in the next day. There's been many occasions of different road rages where people have followed the other person in the car. And the congressman had, a great statement. How does this deal with our bodies? I mean, how is our bodies actually breaking this down or dealing with this mechanism that's happening? What are we doing that causes us to have so much rage? How are we dealing with that? So, audience, send in your questions, send in your comments, and Dr. Miller, why don't you kick this conversation off? You're muted, Dr. Miller.
Okay, yeah, I'll start off by saying, as time has changed, I think we as people um, a little bit less tolerant of things or actually just things in general that are not us. We're less tolerant. We complain about more things. Some things that I bet if you were out today, I bet you would have got, if you listened enough, you'd have heard so many complaints about the weather as being hot. Now they told us last week that it was going to be hot today, and that it's going to be hot the next few days. But what I'm saying is that even though we know that, we just don't tolerate the things that cause us discomfort, as well as people in the past. People in the past were seem to be more adaptable, more acceptable of things and each other. And so when we become a little bit more, and the person to us a little bit more rigid, and then we are going to get into each other's space. And this rigidity creates a situation of friction between the two people, and therefore conflict is just there to be had. And so part of that is I think us learning to be more tolerant of other people, and also understanding that we're not carbon copies of each other. We're not going to think the same about everything. We're not going to react the same way to everything. And let us be more tolerant to how other people think and how they react and how they in their opinion, and be tolerant and be able to accept other people and their opinion regarding what it is that we think, even though they may differ. It doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It's just that they have their life experiences and their circumstances may have brought them to a different conclusion about whatever it is that you may be discussing. But that's sort of the environment that we live in today, and it is a situation where conflicts seem to occur more in this kind of environment than it was when we were a time when people tended to be a lot more tolerant of one another, and tolerant of things that may not be that comfortable for them. They didn't really have to respond or react to it. They was able to kind of just accept it and let it be. So these are things I think that we as people have to learn how to deal with that, and and I think as time goes, at least what I've experienced and what I've learned and seen in life is that each year our tolerance become a little bit less than it was the years before. And so I'll stop there and let my colleagues respond.
You're still muted, Maya. There you go.
Can you hear me now? I don't know why I was screaming after that. Um, well, I mean, there's a breakdown of a lot of things that are going on around us. Remember, just like diseases during COVID, I think that was my time when I would highlight, and then from there, diabetes, other things. Every disease has two things, and I'm running out of computer dying. Every disease has two things: what's happening, what the disease wants to do, and how we react as human beings, right? Long story short, you all have heard me say when we had certain guests on and they would talk about poverty and whether or not Black Americans feel comfortable in their poverty. And I would say, poverty is a form of oppression. That form of oppression, for a lot of people, are now experiencing. We were talking about our Black brothers and sisters, my community. Then, what's happening psychologically is we're in a situation where we found out some of our American colleagues actually voted or supported the kind of oppression and poverty for Black people. And now they're finding out that when you vote for racism, it comes with a heavy side of sexism, classism, all the other isms. And they are getting what a lot of Black Americans in this country have experienced. you know. And I would say they're getting a watered down version, because think about how much our ancestors have worked to create the current situation, which was lighter than our ancestors, but still horrific. And now people are finding out their money, and that construct of black and white, they're finding out that their money, if they don't have it, they are being put in what they call the black category. And it's stressing people out, right? It takes a lot. And then a lot of the people that are doing this had a particular faith they subscribed to, and now there's a struggle with the reconciliation of what they thought was their faith, whether or not it was a spiritual thing, or whether or not, whether or not I can't, I was trying to sugarcoat it, but whether or not their faith was based in white supremacy. And it's hard to stomach when you grew up on these fundamental things, and now you're rereading this book that now, in the context of what you live, says the opposite of how you've lived. And it's the same thing as you all know, a lot of work I do is in HIV. It's the same thing as watching someone who wrongfully judged somebody or a group of people living with HIV, then get diagnosed, and you're watching them start to hate themselves. If you hate yourself and you're reckoning here, then that energy comes out on other people. It's stressful. It's now, not controlled by them. They thought they were in control, and they realize a lot of people that I went to med school with are realizing they've been used. And so there's this added stress. And now some of the things that I would say, I'll take the liberty of saying in this space, some of the things that Congressman Davis has worked so hard against to create this world where we live in, where we have safety and peace, and I had access to med school, all those things that I found. A lot of people, now the curtain is pulled back, and there's not a fully clear picture, I don't think yet, but a more clear picture of Congressman Davis, what you were actually going in those rooms and being up against. Like you would go in, I imagine all this stuff would be going on. You'd, do what you needed to do, and you and some other people would do what you need to do to still create kind of this bubble of safety. And, then a lot of people that kind of take those spaces for granted and what you've done for granted, and some other people who are leading the fight for Americans, we took it for granted because we didn't see the ugly underbelly. Now the ugly underbelly is showing because it's losing its frontal cortex. But we ain't even going to get into that. And so now people are in this world, and it's almost like, I don't know how many of you have seen that movie Bird Box. It's almost like out of the blue, people feel this rage, but it was curdling in their spirits. Biologically, it's curdling because COVID happened. And then after COVID happened, people had to catch up financially with what they were dealing with. And then after that happened, people were still losing their job. Then after that happened, we entered into this administration, and then everything is getting cut. If I'm a person that had some kind of benefit from the system that was created by so many of our Congress people that fought for us, now it's all being cut or in danger of being cut, because if you kind of follow it, there'll be attempts, and then they'll go to court, and then it won't happen. But the reality of what's happening is curdling people and causing us to be in a fight or flight, and too much sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, cortisol, all this other stuff. It's like a pressure cooker. And then you get in the space, you're in the car, somebody else is in the car, you want to share the same space. Well, a lot of us, feel powerless against the Supreme Court, powerless against the things that are going. But you know who we want to enact that against? The person in the other car. And we take that moment to say, I hate, or I do not like where we are today. And it comes out in so many other ways. I can get into biopsychosocial stuff, but I'll make space for my colleagues to. But that's the gist of what happened. And it's all different stories through history when these things happen. that we now read about, but when they happened 100 years ago, how the human brain reacted. That disease is called racism. That disease is called classism. That disease is now showing to be chronic infectious, and we're trying to get rid of it. But like I said before, every disease has two parts: what it wants to do, what racism, classism, and all those other things want to do, and how we react as human beings. So we have to look at how we react. The answer is love. It feels cliche, but it is love to your community around you and building support.
But don't we
Outstanding.
all become what we are taught? I'm saying all behavior is essentially learned behavior. And we're taught some notions about what it means to be a thriving individual in our world. And so we're taught to defend ourselves a certain way, or we're taught to be a certain way to keep from being violated. I'm saying. And so there are the offensive moves, and then there are the defensive moves. And so one decides how they can separate being defensive from being aggressive, for example. An aggressive personality, or a personality that says, I can protect myself without being the offender, that I don't have to be offensive in order to be protective. I know that sometimes we're debating issues, and there are people who say they will vote in favor of giving aid to another country to defend themselves, but they will not give aid that another country can use to attack somebody else. And that there's a difference between attacking and defending. And it's like driving, I call it driving defensively, that you drive for the other person as well as drive for yourself without being too concerned about who got the right of way. Yeah. You know, some people will let you in, and others will make sure you don't get in.
I don't know if someone else wants to, because I know I just said a lot, but I think there's layers to that. I think you're right, Congressman Davis. There's a difference between defending yourself and attacking. You know, we see it in NBA, we see it in different things. They call it defense and offense. You know, I think well, I know historically, history has shown that while that is true, you number one mentally have to be at a place where trauma and grief aren't overwhelming to you, because once trauma and grief get overwhelming to you, you either are in fight or flight. If you feel safe, if you perceive yourself to be safe, then you tend to be in a parasympathetic or a not fight or flight, calmer state where your brain can process and react and process the other options. I can fight, I can flight, but guess what? I'm calm. I like this, and I'm just going to continue in that space. I see the other people come off mute. Before that, I'll be quick. Here is what I'm hearing from a lot of my patients. The other layer to that is whether or not due to the color. Can you all hear me?
We can hear.
Okay. I think my screen went out. But
Yeah.
the other layer to that, unfortunately, for a lot of patients I serve, is the definition of who's aggressive and who's just defending themselves changes in our news, unfortunately, based on the color of someone's skin. We just had an African American boy that was literally walking away and determined to be an aggressor and lost his life. Whereas we can pull from cases such as George Zimmerman, who was determined to be standing his ground when he was in fact aggressive. So I think the frustration that a lot of people are feeling is that the needle and the goalpost keeps moving and it moves, it moves. We see things where, and even in the administration right now, aggressive towards certain communities, and they're marketing it like they're defending themselves. They're, the Women's Safety Act, keeping the women safe, and it's actually aggressively, you know, offensive and aggressive about it. So I think that's the frustration. And some people don't know where that line goes. And it sends them into a space where no matter what, I'm going to have to go 0 to 100 because I can't trust everybody else to stay at 15.
Yeah.
Well, outstanding. Kay Trina says, good evening. Sandra Rose says, nicely put, Dr. Maya. Nice references. Okay, Dr. Maya, we see you. That's from Sandra Rowe. Audrey Jaycock says, since people can't control what happens to them governmentally, they feel they can control their own space with anger against others aggressively. I want to say hey to the people over at the Core Center. We see you and thank you so very much. Sandra Rowe also says, she says, Dr. Maya, why do psychiatrists call fight or flight an anxiety attack?
I
And
know
I
I've been
think
in,
Dr.
I
Maya
can
is probably.
but I see Dr. Miller off, and I want to give space so we can share, because I like to give and learn, and then I'll come in. Dr. Miller.
Okay. Yeah. So, as one interprets a situation, sometimes when we say fight or flight, oftentimes this is a something that is dependent on that individual feel that my life is now depending on what I do, uh, and I can either run or I can stand my ground and fight. Now, to a large extent, that's going to depend on where my thought process is in terms of how I feel that I'm going to what are the outcomes going to be here. And so sometimes we can always say, well, and maybe in many cases it might be the appropriate thing to do is if there is no win. There's times when there's not going to be a win in a situation. In other words, if you're able to walk away sometime without losing your life or getting injured, sometimes that is the wisest choice you can make. Now, however, that sometimes depending on your state of mind, and also on what it is that's happening to you. So obviously, if you're in a situation where you feel threatened by another individual or a situation, then you got to decide whether I'm going to fight or whether I'm going to run. And most of the time it's not always a situation of your emotion. Sometimes it's a situation of really what is going to happen to me. What happens if I stand and fight? What happens if I run away from this? And so that entails many things, including my mindset, how I feel about myself in both instances. Whether standing I feel good about that, or if I fight and the outcome is such that I'm injured, but I still feel good about it because I defended myself and I defend what was right. Um, And sometimes, I mean, the old folks used to have a saying, and I think it's still good today, that you got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. And times when right is worth standing for, and there are times when you can't. It's a matter of you being right or the other person being right, but the outcome or the issue itself isn't probably it may not be worth fighting for because it might mean that you lose a life and or you destroy a life, which either way, it's not a good outcome for either individual. But sometimes you just if that individual is threatening you with a weapon, then that's you can't run. You're in a situation where you got to make some choices, and the choice is different. When it comes down to a verbal response, or you to somebody saying something to you or doing something that doesn't really physically harm you, but may mentally harm you, or may mentally harm someone that you care about. And those are the kinds of situations where, again, that we most often encounter, and we have to decide, is it worth fighting, or is it better that I just turn and walk away from this setting? But again, you have to live with the choices that you make. Either way, you're going to have to live with the choice that you make.
But
Outs-
are there
Go ahead.
ways of teaching, say, conflict resolution? Like there are some people who seemingly must have the last word just in a normal conversation. That there are those individuals who just are not satisfied unless they have the last word. And of course, that creates anxiety and, of course, a lot of friction that ends up occurring because I don't think we have taught enough conflict resolution skills
Hmm.
to individuals to make use of them. It's like saying there's a lady I know who has written a book and she calls it Learn to Be a Buddy and Not a Bully. And so there are individuals who become bullies in such a way that they create the negative environment where if they had been taught a little different, that environment perhaps would not have been created.
Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
so it is often antagonistic to deal with the person with that kind of personality.
I think there are people with that personality at baseline, right? And at baseline, when a person, I'm getting feedback. Can you all hear me back? Or
Yeah, we can hear it well.
um, at baseline, there are people's structures and how people live, and it's just a variety at baseline. When a person, the literature shows when someone feels safe, that's a space where you can teach those type of things and introduce those other options. The other options come from a prefrontal cortex where you can kind of process and say, here are my options. I can stay calm. I can go 0 to 100. I can do that. But if that's not there, then while a person is kind of in that fight or flight and living in those type of situations, the literature shows that we can present that type of strategy for decision making, but it doesn't stick because there's a chronic presence of norepinephrine, adrenaline, all these things that people experience. So, to go back to the question from earlier, why is it happening more often? It's because more people are in a space where they're constantly under stress and losing that or lessening that prefrontal cortex, that rational decision making. And the stressors may not come from a physical, someone came up to me or anything like that, but there's something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs that looks at physiological needs like breathing, food, water. When the prices of food go up, water is harder to get. Shelter costs more. Clothes cost more. You get stressed. You sleep less. Safety and security. Watching the literature shows that if I am, and I speak from literature, not from this experience. If I'm a Black man and I can watch a Black man walking away from a situation and they're still shot and that person gets off and doesn't go to jail, it triggers me to know that my safety and security is also at risk by watching that person of that demographic like mine. A system of whether or not someone feels they belong, a system whether or not they can have self-esteem and actualize their dreams of who they want to be. A lot of that is under threat right now. So right now in this situation, for a lot of people, trying to have a conversation where you say, hey, there's other options of just walking away doesn't stick because there's so many people under stress, and that's why it's happening. So in that road rage situation, that person paid so much for gas that cost them their food. They had to do something different. They're living differently. So in the point where I want my car in the same space as someone else's car, I'm not the prefrontal cortex, that place where I make that rational decision making is kind of being silenced over time due to the stress hormones. And then that person just reacts in the way they feel like society and everyone is reacting to them. So yes, it can be taught, but the person has to be in the same space to uptake it.
Okay. Well, we have two quick questions. I'm going to give you both of them. The first question says, is this one of the reasons why insurance companies make gentlemen be older before their insurance coverage decreases? And the second question is Kathy Johnson says, does this type of action, road rage, uncontrolled stress, does this cause a lot of our heart problems, hypertension, cardiac metabolic disorder? Can any of the doctors answer those questions for me? Lack of sleep as well. So take it away, guys.
I don't think there's any doubt among physicians that all of us believe and see in the studies that stress contributes to diabetes, heart disease, dementia, and probably a vulnerability to cancer. This is when the metabolism of your body is out of whack. You have overproduction of certain hormones. You don't sleep. All those things affect your ability to think, to act rationally, to understand the consequences of your action, to make you have a trigger temper. So all of these things contribute to ill health. And it doesn't surprise me that if you're living in a high stress environment, you're going to have more chronic illnesses. And I think that's one of the health inequities that the Congressman has been trying to resolve for so many years. And he's absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. One of the other, issue that we deal in our, is that in our community is that there are a lot of people under stress for things that, other people in other communities may see them, and without understanding or knowing exactly what their situation is, may not see that as being a normal response. For instance, I remember having this conversation with a patient some years ago, and this was I don't know, 30-some, 40-year-old man who was a hardworking guy, about his history and everything. He was a hardworking man, had 2 or 3 kids that he was that he was taking care of, and a wife and the whole bit. And he lost his job. And he came in, and we were talking about the stress of what he was dealing with. And he was enraged because he says, I've done the things that I've been taught that I ought to do. And he says, I'm not going to see my kids starve. He said, I'm a good man, I'm peaceful, but I'm not going to see my kids starve. I will do things that are not peaceful, things that are maybe not legal, before I see my kids starve. And so what I'm saying is oftentimes, we kind of see the activity without seeing the individual and understanding what kind of stress that individual is under that put him in a position where he had to make a choice about something, and he didn't see other options that we may consider that's a more healthy option, but there may not have been that other healthy option there for him. What he saw is that my kids are hungry, and I don't have a job. I can't right now, and I can't I can't delay feeding them. That they have to be fed on a daily basis. I can't say I'm going to just be content with that. And so as we went through the discussion, and he was able to calm down, but I was able to understand and to see him and able to actually get him to a situation where he was able to get some help for his situation and his family. But sometimes people are in these situations without, coming and going to talk to a doctor or to somebody who may be in a position to connect them to where the help is, and they don't know where it is. And all they know is, this is what I'm faced with right now. Hungry kids, rent due. They finna cut the lights out, or they've cut the lights out. And so these are stressful situations that will drive people to do things that otherwise they would not do. And so when someone else who don't understand what this person is going through see this, and they might see them in a light that is not we may say, well, this person did something, and he may have hurt somebody else because he could not see his kids not be able to eat. And I'm not saying we're not I'm not here to talk from a moral standpoint, but from a natural and humanistic standpoint, what are you going to do? And that's that depends on the choices that you feel that you have. And if you don't feel that you have the ability to fulfill your mission and what's required of you in other ways, then sometimes people will take and do it in ways that others who have chosen a different approach to it won't be able to understand.
And that's one of the reasons I have a great affinity for people that do social work and social case work, because many of the individuals who come to them are at their last level of being. The lights are being turned off, or they just got a notice from the gas company that they're going to have to turn their gas off. Now, how are they going to cook? Or the landlord is coming with an eviction notice, and these people listen to this every day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they hear.
Yeah.
That's and so I have a great affinity for the people who do that, because every telephone call is a crisis that they're dealing with from somebody. That it's no, hey, how you doing? Hey, it's good to chat with you. No, it's helped me through this situation, and I'm up against the wall.
Yeah.
What can you do about it? And of course, sometimes they take it out on the caseworker, and the caseworker does not always have an answer for whatever their crisis situation is.
Well, we have two additional quick comments. One comment is, Congressman, you are so right. And I'm a caseworker. And sometimes the caseworker is not having a good day. We have a life just as well. So, Congressman, thank you for understanding. But I would like to tell the listeners that we are human too. We are here to help, but we have problems sometimes paying our bills just as well. So thank you so very much for sharing. Our next comment comes from Stephanie. Stephanie says, thank you guys for being human. Sometimes people don't understand. I go to work every day and I have so many responsibilities. However, I've had disconnection notices as well. And then you have some big mouth person who says, well, what are you doing with your money? I'm trying to survive. Gas prices have gone up. Groceries have gone up. Childcare is out the window. So, yeah, there is no money left to do certain things. I'm on a payment plan for everything. Thank you so much for being human. Thank you guys for sharing. Thank you so very much for sharing. We did not forget your insurance question either, Calvin. Calvin says, is that the reason why men's insurance is higher than women until they get to a certain age? Insurance companies don't view them as being adults until men are 25, but women at 18. Is this fair? Doug, I see you nodding.
It's because they keep the records. They study this. And all this is based on calculations and frequency. And they can see that more problems occur in teenage and young men until recently than in women. But unfortunately, we're reaching equality in this particular space. And I don't think that's a good thing. But historically, it's true that young men tend to drive faster, tend to drink more, tend to fight more, and may be more prone to be involved in violence than women of the same ages, until they start getting some responsibilities and they are less inclined to, because they have the responsibilities to take care of. So it isn't particularly fair, but the insurance companies aren't fair. They're trying to keep as much of your money as they can. It's all about the money and the profits. It's not about fair. It never has been. It's how they make their money, by knowing the numbers.
Wow. Wow. The next statement says, Dr. Miller, thank you so very much. You are absolutely right in your statements. This is hard to deal with. I'm a man who has a family who has been unemployed before. And it tears your gut out when you can't really care for your family, and it causes so much mental anguish. Thank you, sir, for sharing. Thank you. Well, we have 3 minutes before I have to say the words that you don't want to hear, and that is, it's our time. So we'll use these 3 minutes to do a little extension of our Until Next Mondays. And I thank you guys so much for being so engaged. I want to say hey to Terry. Terry, it is great to see you. You are right. It's a long time no see. So Terry, thank you for stopping in. I want to say hey to the engine company. I see you guys here. Thank you so much. Did I say hi to the course center? If not, I'm saying it again because I do not want you guys to put me on blast tomorrow saying that the congressman forgot about you. He never forgets about the course center. So the course center is here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And to the guys in the garage. It's hot. How are you guys out there in that garage? It is hot. I hope you are hydrated, eating watermelon and drinking water. Lots and lots of water. Please. Oh, so the guys in the garage say the door is down. They have an air conditioner. All right. Thank you. You got the garage. I'm going to have to stop by this. Me and the congressman are going to stop by this garage over there on Benview. And one day we coming by there. Renelle Perry is here. She says, thanks for the conversation. Because the pressure is real. All right, well, the pressure is real. Well, Maya, you're until next Monday.
Okay, Maya, till next Monday. I wish everybody hope and that you find your tribe and the people, places, whether it be your pets, the spaces where you can release some of the fight or flight, have moments of joy. Studies show if you look your pet in the eye more than 20 seconds to 2 to 3 minutes, you can experience some of that. Okay. The other thing is, I hope that the leadership of this country that's starting this stuff and all these isms wake up We've seen this tipping point before, and I hope they realize the gravity of some of the things they're doing and how they're of what disenfranchisement looks like, because historically it always comes back to them in a way that's not going to be, and we're at that tipping point. You can feel it, it's pulsating, and the American people can't take much more of this. So I hope there's some changes. Um, Congressman Davis, thank you for making the changes and leading a lot of the change historically. And I hope we can come together soon, because if you look at the 1960s with the war, if you look at what happened in the 1980s, there is a tipping point. And if anybody remembers that, I don't remember the 1960s. I read about it, but it's in our throats. You know what I'm saying? And biology is biology. And we are not the first administration that's going to magically escape biology. And civilizations are civilizations. We're not the first one that's going to magically escape it. I hope they wake up. There are consequences to their behavior.
Okay.
All right. Want to say hey to Donald Dew and to Dr. Obari Cartman, who are here with us just as well. Hey to the both of you. And I see your comments that says, Donald says, we have to have a part 2 to this, and I want to be on the panel. Consider it done, Donald. Consider it done. Obari says, and me too. So absolutely, you too. We have another quick statement here who says, Trump causes our stress. What do we do to get him out of office? So you are absolutely right. Angela Underwood is here. She said,
you can't say on the show. I'm gonna go.
Angela Underwood is here, and she says, this was good. Well, thank you, Angela. Thank you so much. Well, Dr. Miller, you're until next Monday.
Well, I wish I could paint the picture that it's going to be easy to solve these problems and these circumstances and situations that we're in, but I don't really believe that myself. I do believe, though, that, one of the things that we can do is that we can be friend to each other, more friendly towards each other. And one of the things that I will suggest is that we all try to find at least one or two friends that when we are under stress, that we can call and talk to and discuss these things that are going on in our life. They may not be able to solve your problem, but sometimes just being able to get some of that pressure off of you and let it flow to somebody else and hear somebody else's opinion of it may be enough to sort of help you to calm down, because we're in a volatile time now. People are fed up with so much stuff, and when you think that you've seen the worst, that you wake up the next day and you hear something that's even worse than what you heard yesterday. And all these are things that are contributing to the stress that people have. And Dr. Graham spoke about what stress do to us. We've talked a bit here on this today about what stress does from a mental standpoint, but from a physical standpoint, it also does things. I mean, it makes your diabetes more difficult to control. It shoots your blood pressure up. And the ultimate result is that it causes more in-organ damage to your body, to your heart, to your brain. So people end up having strokes and heart attacks. But we got to figure out a way how to communicate with each other a little bit better, how to share some things with each other to kind of control that stress. You don't have the ability to just remove yourself totally from it, because this is life. Life is stressful. But what we can do is maybe talk to somebody about it. And maybe, like I said, you're not going to always find the solution to all the problems that you're dealing with. But if you can just find enough breathing room, you can survive another day. And that day that you survive, an answer to that problem that seemed that was going to just had you weighted down, an answer may turn up. So we gotta figure out how we can find that friend and how we can be that friend for somebody else in these stressful moments in time. And that's my until next week.
Outstanding. Thank you so very much, Dr. Miller. Well, Michelle is here. Michelle asked the question to the congressman. So when we get to the congressman, Michelle, maybe he can touch on this question for you. But Michelle's question is, how in the world did he put his name, that is Trump, on our passports? I don't want mine anymore. I'm tossing it out. Michelle, that was a conversation some of us was having a little earlier. But don't lose your passport because the new one gonna have his picture on. But I guess the congressman can touch on that. But she also asked at the end of her question, does his face stay on there forever? He can maybe answer that for you. Renelle says, cares, let go and let God. Absolutely. Well, Doug, you're until next Monday.
Well, I'm really sorry that Dr. 100 has left us because I just wanted to express how much I understand how she feels and her disappointment and frustration at how things have turned out this particular year. She's 100% correct to feel that way. But I would state that the president's health is clearly failing. For those of us who have seen people age, he's rapidly aging. This is not going to go on indefinitely. I would also say that probably more people disagree with him than agree with him. So I don't think this is going to be a permanent state of affairs. But I agree with Dr. Mueller that there's going to be a long period of reconstruction. The thing of the congressman is people can learn to be different if they choose to. Instead of woke being a pejorative term, people can be educated to understand the truth in that particular perception of human existence and understand it is our moral obligation to do something about it. So I do believe in the power of education if you are open to it and are willing to learn and can be humble and accept some of the other words from someone who sees things and views things differently than you do. So I think humility would be a great asset to have in these times of conflict.
Outstanding. Well, I have really two quick announcements. The PIP program, this was sent to me by a young woman, and I think that's for People's Gas. It's some type of relief for People's Gas, and I believe it's called the PIP program. All of our CETA offices, if you qualify, they have some relief for you. So visit CETA. Some of them are in the city. We have a couple of them in our district. So please make sure that you look into that if that is needed. I want to just say thank you to the young lady who sent that information to me to share. Also want to say today is June 29th. And of course, the Congressman's Back to School Picnic Parade and World Health Day is coming up, and that is August 15th. So if there's anyone here who would like to be a vendor in any of our festivities on that day, make sure you do so. You can contact Marquita Smith or Jackie Greer and myself for healthcare. So you can contact me for healthcare. Thank you to some of the vendors who have already been inboxing about, the back to school picnic parade and health day. So thank you guys so very much. But just want to put that out there to make sure that you have it. Well, Congressman, as always.
Well, we've had another very interesting conversation, and I want to thank everybody for participating. I want to send out, though, a condolence to Minister Louis Farrakhan and his family on the passing of his wife, who's 90 years old. And I recall one year she was my special guest and sat at my table at the Congressional Black Caucus ALC. And so I send condolences out to Minister Farrakhan, all the members of her family, and all of the members of their organization, their group. And she was a delightful lady to know and interact with. And I express that to them. I also want to congratulate the original Providence Baptist Church, who on Sunday had their 163rd anniversary. 163 years. They are the oldest Black Baptist church on the west side of the city of Chicago, and it was founded by individuals who had been slaves. And it is still going, 163 years. They've been in a lot of different addresses, but they're still the same church, and they're right there on Pine Avenue, right off of Central, Central and Race, and they're going strong. And congratulations to them. I want to thank the Chicago Bar Association, who gave me a wonderful, wonderful award on Saturday evening. And, I don't know when I've been among so many different lawyers and judges all at one time, but just thinking that they have to make decisions oftentimes in cases where they have to decide whether a person was defending themselves when there was a murder trial, of whether the person killed the other person for some other reason. And they have to make a determination sometimes whether that was in defense or was something else the reason. So they have tough decisions sometimes to make. I also will just make an announcement. We are having a 250th year press conference on Friday morning at the Chicago Historical Museum, where we will talk about where we think America has come in 150 years and where we think America has not followed up to the extent that it needs to on some of the promises that were made when they said that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain rights. And we question how well we've done with some of that. So let me just thank everybody for a wonderful evening, a great discussion, and until next Monday, let's keep believing and keep hoping and keep working. We'll see you then. Thank you. All right.